one of my personal favorites, the Peat Monster.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, the I'm going to start with the inspiration of Peat Monster.
Yeah, please.
And then that's going to get us to the penicillin story, because I think it's interesting. So used to brew beer as well, just as a hobby, and have always loved hoppy beers. And years ago, 20 odd years ago, my buddy Dave, an old university friend, we were drinking this beer at his house in Connecticut. It's called Hop Devil, and it was brewed by this Philadelphia brewery. And I was thinking at the time, how come, you know, it has this illustration of this like hop flower that had a devil's face on it, and I said, okay, this is a bit whimsical. How come Scotch whiskey can't do stuff like this? Why is Scotch whiskey, this is 20 years ago, so staid? Why does everything look like all the labels kind of look like they were designed during the time of Queen Victoria, and they never changed? And I kind of came away from that conversation. I remember flying home back to London at the time and thinking, you know, why can't we do this? And maybe peat is the kind of the vehicle for creating a whiskey like this. And, you know, a year or two later, yeah, we developed this idea for a really peaty whiskey, and we called it Monster initially. And then we added peat later so that we could have something that was more trademarkable. And that's where it came. So in a sense, this whiskey was inspired by the world of craft beer. And it helped me think differently about what you can do in the world of Scotch whiskey that just at that time had never been done. And you know, it really is a good example of the reason this business exists, Compass Box. Our mission, if you will, is to show the world what's possible with Scotch whiskey. So we've never been interested in hewing to, you know, the lines of other people have created, and I like challenging the status quo when there's a good reason to challenge, not for, you know, publicity or rabble rousing or anything like that. You know, I thought that those staves, when we were in the early Spice Tree days, were making a much better product than, you know, so many other malt whiskeys aged in reused casks in a much more efficient way. They didn't agree with me, but I stood up for that because I thought it was right. And so anyway, so coming up with a crazy label with a monster on it and calling it Peat Monster was, you know, pretty unusual at the time, but now lots of people do it. And so I think it's made Scotch whiskey a more interesting place. That's part of what we want to do. And so then also, I have always, the whiskeys in here are primarily malt whiskeys from the Laphroig distillery, around 35% of the recipe, and the Caol Isla distillery, which is most of the balance. And there's 1% of the recipe you'll see if you look up the recipe on the website. 1% of the recipe of this is casks we use for Spice Tree. We put them in here. Just 1% of the recipe. But we do that because even though that doesn't sound like much, it just gives those peaty, smoky whiskeys a little underlying richness. I've always thought that it's important not just to bring our whiskeys to the world of whiskey enthusiasts, like many of you, but also to the world's best bars. And this is going back now 23, 24 years. So I've always kind of targeted, if you will, those two groups in the world. So I thought if we can get the best bartenders in the world to talk about our whiskeys and Scotch whiskey, we get the Scotch whiskey enthusiasts, you know, talking about us and what we do with blending. Well, those two, you know, when those things cross, that's going to be kind of powerful. And you know, there was a time when one of the best cocktail bars, one of the early sort of uber cool, you know, hard to find cocktail bars in New York was called Milk and Honey. And I did a tasting there in 2003 or 4. And I brought our whiskeys, our blended Scotch whiskey at the time, which was called Isla. Now it's been replaced by Artist Blend. And I brought Peat Monster and I brought some others. And I did a tasting and taught him about Scotch whiskey. I left some samples because I was flying home the next day. I was done for the working. And I come back a year or so later, and the best-selling cocktail at Milk and Honey is this thing called Penicillin. And the guy, Sam Ross, who invented it, said, John, you left those samples. And I thought, you know what? There's not enough great Scotch whiskey cocktails in the world, so I'm going to create one. And he created this twist on a whiskey sour using an unpeated, you know, blended Scotch, like our Artist Blend, not too dissimilar to Orchard House, but with a little softness of grain whiskey added to it. And then he topped it with Peat Monster. And that was the original Penicillin cocktail. Now, I feel like I've been babbling. So let's go to some questions, shall we?
Please, can we have some more questions? So as I said, some people have emailed me in. We've asked the ones that are on the chat so far, but we really do want some more on the chat. Whilst you're typing away, someone said, I've been onto the Compass Box website. These are part of the core range, but you also have this fantastic portfolio of limited editions.
Mhm.
Are they truly limited? In other words, and I'm paraphrasing, once they're gone, are they truly gone?
Yes. Yes is the answer to that question. So when we do a limited edition, it is a limited run. There's a set number of bottles that we publish and let everyone know this limited edition is this many bottles, and we're distributing it all around the world. Occasionally, and we've done over 150 whiskeys since I started this business 23 odd years ago, most of those being limited editions. Occasionally, we bring back some limited editions that have been particularly popular that we can bring back. Some limited editions we just can't possibly bring back. In general, we could never possibly bring back, couldn't hope to find those kinds of whiskeys again. And so Flaming Heart's a good example of a limited edition we bring back every couple of years. And when we do, you know, we're doing sort of a tweak, sort of like it's a cover version of the classic, of the original. And we let people know how it's a little bit different, true to the style of that limited edition, in this case, Flaming Heart. But maybe we created some different sorts of, we added some touches to it that were different from the past ones. And we let people know that. And again, a limited number of bottles. When that one's gone, that one's gone.
So presumably there's a secondary market for popular limited editions.
He said with a knowing grin.
He said with a knowing grin, just trying to tease it out from John. And anyone else that looks at Scotch whisky to drink, save, and make a profit on, in case you're interested.
Yeah, we did not set out. I never set out to do that. And some of the prices are embarrassing and silly, I think. But that's the world. That's what happened. You know. When I started Compass Box 24 years ago next month, yeah, we were in. Single malts were growing, but they were a tiny fraction of the overall market, and they were marketed in ways that people felt they were just for men, and they had rules to them. You drink them, all that stuff, and you know, yeah, the industry has changed, and maybe we've been a small part of driving that change in a good way. One of the things that's changed is people collecting these limited edition whiskeys, and it's guilty. It's something, I tell you. I never set out to do that, and of course we don't make any extra money on that. That's just the folks who are involved in those secondary markets, and that's fine. You know, that's fine.
Thank you. So I don't think that there are any more questions coming in. There are some more questions. Sorry, one more question because I'm just conscious of time. Do you have an eye to the color of the whiskey you are making?
The simple answer is no. Color, because really our focus is on aroma and flavor and mouthfeel. And the color is what the color is. Yeah, I know there are, some of the bigger players and other blenders will add a certain whiskey component to a blend for color. And we don't do that. It's really around aroma and flavor. And that's the way we think, which is in a way is different than a lot of the other blenders out there, but it's our way. Nice question. Thank you.
So we'll do one more question because I think we're all conscious of time. One more question, and that is, which of your whiskies do you think works best as a cocktail base?
As a cocktail base? Oh, okay. I could answer this in a way that would be kind of provocative, or at least off-putting for some. I guess
don't do that, John.
So don't do that. Okay,
well,
right.
You're the expert.
As a cocktail base, we're not one that we've tasted tonight. It's called Artist Blend. I mentioned it before. It's what most people, when they make penicillin, Compass Box penicillins, they use Artist Blend. It's just over there behind us, and that is such a versatile cocktail base, I think. The other more exciting answer is I love using Peat Monster in cocktail. I love drinking this as a highball, just a whiskey and soda. If you like smoky whiskey, and it's going to be hot for the rest of the week. If you've never had a whiskey and soda, whiskey, soda, and ice, that's all you need, or maybe a little zest of lemon in it. try. I just love Peat Monster highballs, and I love them as a base for. Instead of tequila, I use Peat Monster, and we make margaritas. It just has this cut through that I love when you use it in a cocktail.
Wonderful.
So there's 2 for 1 answer.
Well, that has whetted the palate. So thank you so much to John, to everyone, for giving up your evenings and for joining us and for asking these questions. I'm going to wrap up now, and I'm going to do so by urging you to do 2 or 3 things. First of which is to go onto the website and give your feedback on the whiskies. And this is really, really valuable and really, really important to us. It's what allows us to help us create these fantastic and deep relationships with companies like Compass Box, with distillers like Compass Box, and helps us create the statures that you get in your box. If not for that feedback, these would be 3 CLs, not 10 CLs, and you wouldn't be able to share them with your friends and family. You wouldn't be able to come back to them again this time next week if you want to do so. Please, please, please give us the feedback on your loves and your likes on these whiskies on the website. Second thing is, I urge you to go onto the shop and buy full-size bottles of the whiskies that you like and love. You're all members here. You all have discounted pricing on the website. And John's already spoken about not only the 4 whiskies that you have in your tasting box, but also artist blends. So if John's whetted the palate for a Penicillin, artist blends available on the website. The Peat Monster is available on the website. And if there's something that you want from Compass Box that's not available, please do just reach out to me. And finally, if you have any other questions that spring to mind when you're having these again, because again, you've got statures, not miniatures. If you're having these again over the weekend or next week, any questions that come to mind, email me, richard@thespiritedclub.com. I'll collate them, share them with John, and we'll provide the answers back to you in a few days' time.
Fine, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I finish with one thought?
Please, please.
First, I want to say thank you, Richard.
Thank you,
Scott, very much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun. But don't get me wrong. I do enjoy drinking whiskey just as it comes out of the bottle. Maybe not on a night like tonight when it's 32 degrees, but certainly, you know, when the weather is cold and in a flask, you know, in the weekends and the cold weather days when you're out walking and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter how you enjoy your whiskeys. There are really, truly no rules. Just enjoy it any way you like. That's my message. And so I thank everybody for taking part and for inviting me. And I hope that maybe in some small way we've inspired everybody to discover a different aspect of Scotch whiskey that they weren't aware of before tonight. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, John. And thank you to everyone, and wish you a great rest of the evening. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers.